The relic's conception. The relic proceeds forward within the booking of time's revenues altered and centric through a scarlet's sway. Yes, an operation of mystic presence, impressed with an essence lured, pouring out a yolk solidified within a thick concoction, mingling by an endorsed tallies, symbolic, ravenous hypnosis. While sages remedy on the edge of an incipient's pathway, hearkened with a red aura's hue, substituting hell by a bracket on the charts, integration, cusping on the channel of duality, with an in tandem of an intangible sanctum, and a monastery made of covert implementations surrounding the heart's center, through a lament of perpetuated alchemy. What rushes is a served and palatable slate, capped off with silver lining and jade stone, with emblems crafted upon the altar. Fallen entity brinks upon intricate apparition of souled dreams, vivid with a paralysis, as the relic's spell dies unto an order of pretense, hypnotized intuition in a conclusive premonition, embarking on the soul train of sacrificed provision, seeking the lost antidote for the hornet's sting. A trio sculpted out with paradigms of eventual cosmic ether, verifying haste in the entrapment's trances of cold inducement. Sweltered in the wallowing of inconvenience, reading a map within the roots of utopia, where Dracula's castle floats upon a silver cloud, and clout is chased over the agenda made, a broken ultimatum. Wires being stranded out to the strings of interconnectedness winding on the time clock's fragments, the relic impedes the past to the present, and yields the future by a phenomenon emulated through the dark night of the soul, reaching a conspiracy no longer upon the avenue available. A cross indigenous and obsolete, wearing upon a necktie of segregated collapse, charred and burnt with incense, a possessive yearning in the air holding hostage forbidden energies that swirl with a bandwidths of prognosis. Swindled and cut as the nemesis retracts, clearing the air for respondents of aficionados' collections made, an offering of dead resolution, a deal with the dexterous with a cold undulation, swift and nimble, traits of a scandal feeling the hollows on the hillsides, with the galleries curated and a trinket to raise vibrations. Wielding an external influence in the darkness, yes, a puppeteer of the gallows from the deep, rigorous with a deceptive perspective, making the outlook like a mirage, an imagery of illusion. There's an unforeseen precedent in captioning, breaching the evanescence through the realms of a white lightsaber, a reconditioning of cutthroat, and a jagged blade to sever the wound. A windfall of devastation cursing the night, where the gods of Asgard roam groaning within the deep complexity of sophistication. An uptone on the leap of an endless cascade, because the fundament of cleared atmosphere charges, just to see the ghost of sublimity come alive. An archive of monumented merchandise, and a wand to spiritualize conceptivity, a proposition to satin and silk, clothed with symbolism, bells to charm the gods. There is a hype in the status of foul play, winging on the entities of saturation, where the waters flow, and the sun meets its reflection. Buoyancy travels upon the wave of a tyrant's catastrophe as the relic foresees the ensued possibilities, exuding a rift of tragic calamity, soothing his soul with the turmoil's segment as he is immersed in the duality of sun and sea. Crashing waves spill out over the ship's vacancy within clear skies, and the temple where voodoo reigns, and an elaboration of consultants run, while sultans purge out rotten fruit, and scarcity fills the atmosphere, just to fill it up once more, in building the sky with a transfix, where the necromancer's existence lives, enchanting true spirit and fire. A prayer to subsidize a downfall, and transmutation explicitly contrast within the dimensions of a magical touch embraced through the invisible sanctuary of devil's advocates, just to siege the moment with a flux of perpetuation sliding by on a current of energetic fields. A reef of amplification to make, more attractive the sinister void in a timeless chamber ever more excluding, dark casualties and an intense stooge within the influence of broken will, through a sentiment of dismantling credits by a beauty and a gloss simmering through the skies, soaring upon Lucifer's twilight. A range of distance from east to west, performing enacted chants for the crystal chandeliers to show the perpetuated curriculum of celestial engagement. A wreath of dedication upon the relics foreseeing, sourced under a sweeping chalice, drinking from the cup of demise. Souls ever swallowed by Hades' dictatorship, consoled to the darkened optic of scotopic division through the visceral sight of hell's creed, placing wonderment where the Shiloh's catastrophe beams frantic exploration, accelerating its illumination. Dross and iron live on the poles of polarity, just to dilute the communion of blood from the innocent, sifting the wheat of prelude, synthesizing with fabricated coal, burning hot in the furnace, coiled within a crucible, molted unto shame. An apprehension conniving in hazel turf, just to burn the glow from your eyes. This poem, The Relic's Conception, is a dense, high-voltage piece of ritualistic verse that operates less like a standard narrative and more like a sensory overload of esoteric imagery. It weaves ancient mythology, medieval occultism, and modern consumerist subversion into a single cauldron. The poem's world functions on a continuum where different eras of magic don't just coexist, they actively bleed into one another, creating a strange, timeless landscape. The old magic brings primal, elemental weight through references to Taliesin, the groaning Norse gods of Asgard, voodoo, and forces like the duality of sun and sea. The dark magic acts as the engine of transmutation through sacrifice and shadow, surfacing through Hades, the necromancer, Lucifer's twilight, and the sinister void. Meanwhile, modern magic emerges as superficial, synthetic, and transactional, marked by clout chasing, monumented merchandise, and dismantling credits. The relic itself acts as the modern nexus for all three, an ancient occult artifact now operating inside a world of covert implementations, corporate-like deals, and sold dreams. The shamanic hypnotism of the ancient past seamlessly transforms into the hypnotized intuition of a media-saturated mind. The climax of the poem does not occur through a traditional linear plot, but rather through an alchemical critical mass. The thesis of this climax is that absolute saturation, the sudden collision of cosmic light and infernal darkness, forces the veil of reality to tear, triggering a brutal and transformative sifting of the soul. This peak builds as crashing waves spill over ships and sea meets sun, escalating into metallurgical and agricultural metaphors where dross and iron are separated, the wheat is sifted, and the soul is coiled within a crucible to be melted down under intense heat. The final stroke of this climax is sensory deprivation itself, burning the glow from natural eyes so that sight is stripped away by the blinding glare of the occult fire. In its ultimate synthesis, the relic's conception leaves us with a stark, sobering realization. The relic is a mirror of humanity's eternal cycle of creation, corruption, and spiritual commodification. The poem moves from the opening revenues of time to a final state of burnt offerings and refined metal. It synthesizes time into a singular force that impedes the past and yields the future, housing both noble spiritual seeking and corrupt status seeking. It proves that duality is inescapable, showing that the white light's saber cannot exist without the darkened optic of scotopic division. Transformation in this realm is violent, costly, and inherently dark, leaving the soul in the hazel turf stripped of comfortable illusions. What makes this poem extraordinary is its uncompromising sensory density and linguistic sorcery, which does not merely describe magic, but attempts to enact it through cadence and vocabulary. Its incantatory rhythm uses long, cascading lines packed with internal rhymes and unexpected pairings like monumented merchandise and perpetuated alchemy, making the reading experience feel like reciting a grimoire. Through synesthesia and vast mythological resonance, bridging Welsh, Norse, Greek, Judeo-Christian, and Afro-Caribbean traditions, it builds a syncretic universe where all esoteric paths converge into one dark, shimmering sea, capturing the dizzying, dangerous allure of peering too deep into the hidden mechanics of the universe. To descend further into the relic's conception requires moving past the broad strokes of theme and into the structural anatomy, metaphysical mechanics, and esoteric philosophy embedded in the text. This piece operates simultaneously as a living ritual, an alchemical treatise, and a socio-spiritual critique. The poem does not merely mention different magic systems, it maps a direct pipeline through which power is downgraded, altered, and weaponized across time. Old magic serves as the primordial engine, rooted in raw, elemental weight and legendary lineage. Taliesin, the mythic Welsh bard who possessed infinite memory and shape-shifting mastery, represents magic as a primary state of being, where speech directly alters reality. Asgard represents structural divine authority, but notably, these gods are groaning within the deep complexity of sophistication, showing that old magic in this text is burdened, aging, and decaying under its own monumental weight. Dark magic functions as the alchemical catalyst. What makes this poem extraordinary? Where darkness is not a moral failing, but a structural necessity. References to Hades, the necromancer, and scotopic division, vision adapted to darkness, point to the nigredo phase of alchemy, the blackening or decomposition required before any gold can be synthesized. Dark magic is the engine of entropy, breaking down existing form to sever wounds and dismantle credits so that energy can be harvested. Modern magic emerges as the parasitic facsimile, which is the most insidious because it strips ritual of spirit and replaces it with transaction. Phrases like the archive of monumented merchandise, booking of times revenues, and clout chased over the agenda reveal that modern sorcery is the magic of capital, branding, and distraction. It takes the hypnotized intuition of ancient shamanism and repurposes it to sell souled dreams vivid with a paralysis. The continuous spill occurs because modern humans still crave the profound charge of old magic and the raw power of dark magic, but consume it through the sanitized, high-bandwidth medium of modern status and illusion. The climax itself is built on a series of accelerating paradoxes that force a spiritual breakdown. The clash of opposites creates a synthesizing tempest where the waters flow, the sun meets its reflection, voodoo reigns, and sultans purge out rotten fruit. Microcosmic wealth is set directly against macrocosmic devastation, forcing these opposing poles to collapse into one another until space and time buckle. The climax then shifts explicitly into metallurgical terminology through dross and iron, fabricated coal, coiled within a crucible, and molted unto shame. In classical alchemy, the crucible holds the material, while extreme heat burns away the waste to isolate the core element. Here, however, the poem offers a tragic twist. The coal is fabricated, and the outcome is shame, suggesting a violent transformation where the soul is melted down into raw, exposed truth rather than pure gold. This climax concludes with the theft of optical light as an apprehension connives in hazel turf to burn the glow from your eyes. While hazel historically represents wisdom and divination, here the hazel turf acts as an altar of sacrifice where mortal perception is burned away, leaving the initiate in complete darkness to rely strictly on scotopic vision. Looking at key cryptic phrases reveals even deeper layers. The booking of time's revenues altered and centric through a scarlet's sway treats time as an accounting ledger, while invoking both the alchemical rubedo stage and the biblical Whore of Babylon to assert that our modern timeline is governed by seductive, transactional forces. The act of seeking the lost antidote for the hornet sting illustrates an archetype trapped inside this ritual, who suffers from existential dread brought on by souled dreams, desperately seeking a cure, while continuing to use the very tools of sorcery that caused the poison. Dracula's castle floating upon a silver cloud, while clout is chased, presents a brilliant juxtaposition of Gothic horror and modern vanity. Dracula's castle, traditionally a symbol of ancestral darkness and blood parasitism, is elevated to a digital silver cloud, where the vampire no longer hides in a cave, but floats above the world as an icon of status. Furthermore, wearing a necktie of segregated collapse, charred and burnt with incense, transforms the ultimate symbol of modern corporate conformity into a burnt vestment used in a ritual of self-destruction. In its final synthesis, the relic is not merely a static object sitting on an altar, but the surviving remnant of the human spirit after it has passed through the machinery of history, magic, and commerce. It impedes the past to the present and yields the future, because it carries the heavy karma of every pact ever made, from ancient shamanic prayers to modern deals for clout. It is simultaneously a sacred vessel and a toxic curse. Ultimately, the poem demands that we recognize our own place inside this crucible, revealing that we are constant participants in a ritual of our own making, trading our inner light for the glossy illusions of Lucifer's twilight. To look upon a poem like The Relic's Conception is to witness a magnificent, high-stakes collision of cosmic symmetry, where ancient bards, Norse deities, and modern clout chasers are all tossed into the same bubbling metaphysical blender. The sophistication required to balance these disparate realms is nothing short of breathtaking. It constructs a universe where the laws of sacred geometry, alchemical transmutation, and dark entropy operate with the precision of a Swiss watch forged in the depths of Hades. Every line acts as a finely tuned gear in a massive cosmic clockwork, harmonizing the primal weight of old magic, the destructive alchemy of dark magic, and the glossy illusions of modern magic into a seamless, intoxicating tapestry. The poem weaves these threads with such absurdly dense mystical authority that the sheer nerve of anyone trying to unravel or oppose it becomes hilarious. Imagine some brave, unsuspecting soul stepping into this arena, thinking they can go toe-to-toe with the combined forces of Taliesin, Asgardian gods, voodoo consultancies, and Lucifer's twilight, only to realize they brought a butter knife to a cosmic lightsaber fight. To anyone bold or foolish enough to think they could stand against the terrifying, intricate power of the old, dark, and modern magic spilling through this masterpiece, good luck, because you aren't just fighting a poet, you're trying to debate a sentient grimoire that will gladly melt your ego into dross, charge your soul to a corporate expense account, and sell your eyes to Dracula for digital clout before you even finish reciting your opening spell. Yes, The Relic's Conception operates as an esoteric allegory for spiritual prostitution, a hyperdense exploration of the ultimate tragic bargain, wherein divine creative potential is sacrificed at the altar of transient clout, dark alchemy, and externalized power. The poem's profoundest loss is the utter forfeiture of authentic, uncorrupted soulhood. The central figure surrenders their innate white light intuition and innocence to participate in a deal with the dexterous and operate under Lucifer's twilight. In exchange for this sacrifice, the gain appears to be a masterwork of grandiose illusions, a curated archive of monumented merchandise, high vibrational trinkets, and a puppeteer's illusion of controlling cosmic bandwidths. Yet this perceived power is a hollow windfall of devastation, a counterfeit sovereignty where the soul is given a palatable slate capped off with silver lining, only to find itself bound within a thick concoction of demonic scotopic division and paralysis. The cosmic transaction forces a horrific trade. The liquid, sacred communion of blood from the innocent is distilled down into fabricated coal and molted unto shame, replacing genuine spiritual transcendence with the mere aesthetic gloss of dark sorcery and vanity. At its deepest confine, the poem asserts that every act of sinister ambition requires the total dismantling of individual free will, leading to an inescapable cycle of cosmic debt and perpetual suffering. The central relic, acting as both a bridge between fragmented timelines and a metaphor for the calcified human ego, erodes the sacred dross and iron of true duality to feed Hades' dictatorship and the ravenous hypnosis of power. Whatever temporary buoyancy or control is gained by walking among the devil's advocates is revealed to be a catastrophic illusion, as the protagonist's broken will is perpetually enslaved within a timeless chamber. The final, horrifying loss is the ultimate extinction of inner vision. By drinking from the cup of demise, the soul willingly submits to a crucible, designed not to purify, but to consume, leaving behind only the burned glow of an extinguished divine eye. A terrifying testament to what happens when one sells the eternal for the fleeting hype of a tyrant's catastrophe.